Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryu Goes Rar, whoops, and welcome back to my videos. In my last video this month I covered a TvP build, and my last TvT one I did, I believe, Reactor Hellions. So here I am back again, and as promised I said I would do Reactor Hellions into a mech transition for TvT this time. So of course this is going to be a Reaper Fast Expand into Hellions into Mech, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to do it, how to safely open into it, and like just kind of how to not die with it. Now, TvT in general is kind of a different beast from all the other matchups, in the sense that it's way more positional and strategical. However, in comparison to Mech in TvT and TvZ and TvP, Mech TvT is a much more special kind of beast, because in this matchup you need to be really like reserved with your units, and you almost have to kind of play like a Protoss in a way, but also a bit more aggressive. Now, with this build we're going to go ahead and open gas first and go into a 15 gas, 16 racks, and then Expo immediately after. This build does kind of account for some blind strategies, however I would recommend still throwing out an 17 Scout, as if your opponent goes Reaper Fast Expand, sorry, not Reaper Fast Expand, but rather 2 racks Reaper, you will want to account for that and possibly change your build up from this. So we're going to go ahead then after the orbital's done and start a Reaper up, and just kind of send our SCV down here to Expo. Now, going back to the point I made where TvT mech is a little bit different, is your units will kind of develop slower than in TvZ, and you won't have the ability to just send your Hellions out to just kind of gain freedom, as you're mostly like just trying to build up a tank count and defend against heavy drop play, whereas other Terrans usually are way more drop intensive than, say, Zerg or Protoss. It's also very positional, as the counter to Mech usually, which a lot of people don't seem to know, is just more siege tanks. Now we're going to go ahead and throw down a factory immediately after, and then depot here. And then, for just reference, so it's factory, refinery, reactor, depot. Another order you could possibly do is reactor, barracks, reactor, depot, then gas. However, either order really doesn't make much of a difference, and both should work. You may get a slight supply cap here, but it's not a big deal. So we're just going to keep our Reaper here. You can send it across the map to kind of trade with their Reaper, so they can send their Reaper in right away immediately after, if that's your thing. I like to keep my Reaper here though if I'm going to play defensive. Now we're going to immediately make a batch of Hellions, so about 2 Hellions there, and then we're going to just kind of rally our units down. And about here when you start your Hellions, so at like 3 minutes, you want to send your Reaper kind of in the back and just wait for the Hellions. The reason for this is, if your opponent does go double gas, you want to kind of have your unit, or your Reaper here, just waiting, so when their 2 Hellions, or their 1 Reaper, 2 Reaper, 1 Hellion shows up, you're ready to defend it. Now you're going to immediately make a Blind Viking and a Barracks Tech Lab, and you're going to continue making Reactor Hellions. You want to kind of keep your Hellions in the back after the first 2 come out, just because your opponent just may have more units than you, so you want to kind of be in the back waiting for your next batch of Hellions. So we're going to start 2 more Hellions, and immediately depot here. And we're just going to go ahead and rally our Blind Viking over here, and this is just to account for a Liberator. Now we're going to swap the Starport onto a Tech Lab, and we're going to make a refinery immediately after. And we're going to go up to about 8 Hellions. You can go up to 6 if you want to accelerate this build. However, if you like to play this build like me and get map control, you're going to want to go into 8 Hellions. Now, I'm just going to quickly pause the video here and explain why Hellions. People may say, well, if you want to be aggressive or you want to gain map control, you should go double gas and go 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion. Yeah, for early game control, that actually does kind of gauge you a lot of pressure. However, by the time you have 8 Hellions, your opponent will have those 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions, and a single Cyclone, whereas you'll have 8 Hellions and 1 Reaper, which is actually significantly stronger if you can get the proper splash damage off and like not eat 3 Reaper grenades. So if you're looking for map control, this style is actually way stronger and way scarier. So you're going to go ahead and start another depot. Immediately after that refinery finishes, you're going to start another one. And you're going to start a tech lab here. And we're just going to go ahead and send these units across the map. Now, we should have started that tech lab earlier, but it's okay. So normally you'd send these Hellions across the map and you try to take a little engagement here. Oh, excuse me. Now note, if they have something like a siege tank here, you're not going to want to engage into it. But you can kind of just see, like, Hellions just shit all over whatever they have at this ramp. And then you could go in, you could just fuck shit up, you know, get some free eco damage. You can swap these two here. We're going to go up to double Raven, obviously. You can start a third CC. This build gets a rather quick third CC when you do it quickly. And now we just make siege tanks. Another reactor here. And with our next 250 gas, we would throw down a factory here. And a factory here. And the reason we put them here is because we're going to be swapping these two. So we can put the starport right on here. Now, our Hellions naturally want to get some eco damage, so we want to just chill with them but not, like, lose all of them. Because the Hellions let you kind of go on the map and stop your opponent from going on the map, because you can kind of just kite their units out. So be mindful of that. You can make some siege tanks. Siege right here, whatever. You can send the starport over here. You can go up to 2 Ravens if you really want to. Or, sorry, 3 Ravens if you want to. I know a lot of people have been trying that. I personally think it is a little bit better, but for this build, I like to personally just stick to the 1 Raven. Now, the 2 Raven instead of the 3. Now, you can then throw down your double armory here. And you can go ahead and start more tanks. And an orbital right away. We're going to send 2 workers up here. And we're going to go ahead and send some SCVs down a little bit early. Now, take note here, if your Hellions are getting a lot of damage, you can actually just throw down your third CC on site because your opponent will be under pressure of that. So now we're just going to keep making Vikings here. And from here, it's really just normal macro cycles. You guys know how it goes. Make your units, you chill here, keep your Vikings in position, your tanks ready, you can grab your Hellions, you can kind of keep them out on the map. You want to start 1-1, and as you start 1-1, you want to get that blue flame upgrade. And in TvT, this is something new I've been trying. I like to go for 4 factories, and then later on, I like to throw down a second starport, and I like to get Vikings and Ravens. Ravens because the added, like, extra disables or possibly even auto turrets can be really useful. And you really don't need that many Hellions when you're playing this style, unless you decide to go into medevacs. So we can throw down our extra depots here because we're a little bit supply capped. We can go ahead and also throw down an eBay if you feel like your opponent's starting to get a little droppy. Don't want to get supply capped this long. This is really bad. And we're just going to kind of keep making siege tanks and putting them in good positions. Of course, we want our air army to be actively kind of searching for drops and preventing drops, you know? So you could keep your air army somewhere here, or even somewhere here, right? You just kind of want to, like, anticipate where your opponent's going to go and try to counter it. So now we're going to go ahead and start our second starport, tech lab on the barracks, and we're going to go ahead and start a 4th CC at about 8 minutes. Some more depots. You can take your Hellions when they have blue flame and kind of just poke out on the map again. Keep making Vikings, obviously. Air control in this matchup is very specific because if your opponent decides to go for the air transition, having more air units is obviously super beneficial. Part of the reason why Mech is kind of so good right now is mostly due to the Thor buff, where it is gained significantly more air range. This kind of allows it to just kind of beat Vikings if your opponent doesn't have enough Liberators or Siege Tanks. Now you're going to start Ravens right away, and you want to also grab the Raven range upgrade. And after that, we grab that Raven range upgrade. We're going to go ahead and start our gases early here, and another CC. Throw down a missile turret as well. And just throw down some missile turrets randomly as spotters if you want in this matchup. It's not a bad idea. We're going to go ahead and save our money up and start 2-2. And at this point, our goal is now to just kind of max out here and chill with a significantly stronger army. And you can go ahead and throw some scans down at your opponent. You can say, is my opponent starting to get into more air units? Is my opponent going heavier bio? You can kind of just make the right call on what you need from your own kind of knowledge. This goes back into something I was bringing up in my earlier video where I mentioned when you're kind of floating with a bunch of money like this, you kind of need to ask yourself, what do you really need? Maybe you need more CCs for more scans, maybe you need more missile turrets, maybe you need to tech up, possibly more factories. You need to kind of just ask yourself as a player these questions. You could even need more starports and to go into Liberator range, you know? So being able to, as a player, ask yourself what you really need is a key thing to growing in StarCraft 2 and just kind of getting better, you know? If you want, you can re-siege your siege tanks. You don't want to land these Vikings. You can grab some Hellions. You can do some slick run-bys. I like to always grab 4 or 6 Hellions when I do a run-by, because that's just the right number to invest into it, because realistically it should be 4 Hellions to one-shot workers. For Terran, 3 for Zerg, so naturally you just want to bring 4. However, 6 can be pretty good too if you want to do something like, say, run your Hellions into the natural, and let's say you add quick servos, which we can grab here. You can then just kind of transform into Hellbats, focus fire some workers down, you know? Got some nice harass in here, and then that may force the bio player back. And you can see Hellbats clear SCVs ridiculously quick. It's 2 shots. So 2 Hellbats can just... They can lay waste on a base. And we want to keep expanding in TvT. Want to keep making CCs. You can throw down some sensor towers as well when your eBay finishes. That's something I neglected to do. It's another good move you can make. And you just want to kind of keep making Ravens, Vikings, teching up here. Eventually you want to get to BCs, obviously, but you can say chill, just keep sending out Hellion run-bys, and then usually by the time your 2-2 finishes, or even when you max out, you can kind of do your little mech push. I personally like to wait for 2-2, as I just feel it's stronger, but you can see we have a ton of Ravens, a ton of Vikings, and all these siege tanks. We can morph our dudes into Hellbats. And behind this, if you're ahead as a mech player and the bio player is not really putting any pressure or denying your gases, you can just keep expanding out on the map, and there's really nothing they can do, you know, because you're just snowballing your lead so heavy with a much better army. Now, it should be noted, when you're playing mech, the key things you need to remember are that the mech army does better when it's together, as opposed to when it's spread out. Which is why when you're dealing with stuff like drops, you need to be really mindful of how you spread your units out, or how much you leave at home in case your opponent does a sort of doom drop counterattack. Now behind this, you can start to go for ship weapons and all that. And actually, I made a little mistake here in my upgrades. When you're playing mech, you actually don't need to get +2 vehicle weapons. It's actually more ideal at this stage of the game to grab +3 armor and +1 air weapons and kind of finish that upgrade out first. And the reason for that is just because past +2 attack, your tanks aren't going to really be doing any more significant one-shotting damage. But with +2, I believe they're able to kind of just one-shot Marines in splash damage radius. I believe, at least. I could be wrong about this, but typically you don't need anything past +2. Anyways, that is the build. You kind of just can throw down your auto turrets in fights. You can anti-armor. If they have siege tanks of their own or medevacs or something like that, you can disable it. But that is the build. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a nice day.